Hi, thanks for watching. It's Lipstick Gal. I wanted to share with you my thoughts on some palettes I picked up at a remarkably reasonable price. These are the Bad Habit palettes, and I got these from Shop Hush. I have 3 of them. I have the Athena, which a lot of people say is a dupe for the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette with those warm and purpley tones. I have this Divine. This is when I purchased it, they had just put it out. I've had it for almost about a month now. And this is supposed to be a dupe for the Star palette from Natasha Denona. And the last one I have is called Supernova. And this is a dupe for the Natasha Denona Lila palette. All right, so right off the bat, I'm not a makeup artist. My skills are, you know, limited to those who wear makeup every day but only apply makeup on themselves. I've been doing it since I was 14, almost 30 years. I love makeup with all of my heart, and eyeshadow is one of my favorite things. Another thing you should know, I don't have any of the palettes that these compare to. I don't have the larger Natasha Denona palettes. I don't have anything from Huda Beauty. What I wanted to know was this, and they're all the same price, was this $16 palette worth my money? How did it, as its own product, perform, not in contrast or comparison to something else? I will say that I have 2 of those 5-pan Natasha Denona palettes. I have one of the holidays from last year, and then I also have one of her original 5-pan palettes. So I know the formula, and I know the formula is different palette to palette. She's changing things regularly. I've never played with any Huda Beauty, but let me just tell you what my thoughts are. All right, the one that I think that I continue to reach for the most is the Supernova, and it could be because the mix of colors in here is beautiful. You can see it's, you know, it's been used. It's been fairly well loved. I do wish at times that there was something slightly deeper than Celestial, and I never thought I would say that. I'm usually the one using the 3rd to darkest shade, not the darkest shade, but I found more recently that having that really dark espresso brown or that black is really nice. Not that I don't have those in singles or other palettes where I could pull from, but I love being able to use a palette for an absolutely full entire look and only have to use one. The one thing I will say is that these all swatch beautifully. Every single one of these works really, really, really nice. And if you're looking at a wide variety here, we have a matte, we have a satin, and then of course we have one of these more metallic foiled shades. Now they look great like this. They also work, let me see if I hold this here. They also work fairly well this way. The one thing that I noticed myself was that it depended on the type of brush I used. I tend to like to use synthetic brushes. This just happens to be a ColourPop brush, but I do also have a lot of natural hair Wayne Goss brushes. And I go back and forth depending on what the palette is like, what the powders, how firmly they're pressed, depending on which I like more. Sometimes I'll apply with one and buff out with the other, or vice versa. Sometimes I just want to use one easy brush for the whole thing. Here's another thing that I noticed, that using a fluffier brush like this, when you pat it in to, say, this shade here, you get plenty of color that's picked up, and there's not a lot of kickback here. And this is a matte shade. This top shade here is Interstellar. And you can even like drag it and you're not getting a lot of kickback. And to me, I was like, wow, that's very impressive. And then if you apply that shade with a brush, you get a really nice, you do get a little bit of kick up, and I always usually tap off my brush before, and I didn't this time, but it's really easy. The mattes are really, really, really nice. Now you can, if you're trying too hard, pick up very little and then blend it away to nearly nothing. So they build very, very nicely. I also loved the way that all of the shimmery foil shades in here applied. And I think that some of my favorites, of course, Brilliance is one of my favorites, and then this one here is Serious. This is another one of my favorites. And I think they work well for me. I like to go lighter on those, like maybe eyelid shades or inner corner highlights because I am so fair, but I really thought this palette worked really well. All right. Next palette I tried, that was the first one out of the 3 that I tried. The next one that I tried is the one I'm wearing today. This is the Divine palette. And I found a really big difference in the formula from, you know, say, I have a little color switch down here I'm using to clean my brush off with. Like these powders, I find that there's a lot more. If you look in the pan, there's a lot more, and I'm not really, and you do get a lot of pigment, but it doesn't take much to bring up a lot more. It's not as soft as, say, maybe a Lorac Pro formula, and it doesn't seem to have that same formulation that maybe Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture did, where you saw people swirling brushes in the mattes, and then they would be down to pan at the bottom. But it does really kick up, I mean, even that one there, just touching it, and you see a lot more of the fallout just sitting there in the pan, and there's a ton on the brush. I found that although I loved the shades in this, and the mattes, and I've used a lot of the mattes, and I think I've used every single shade in here at least once. The problem I was having was the mattes applied nicely. Had to be careful that I didn't get too much. I always had to put a lot of powder underneath here, which I didn't have to do with the Supernova palette. But I did have to put a lot of powder under here to catch any fallout, so then later I could brush it away and not have streaks of color. That was something, because I tend to do my face first and then my eyes, and I'm learning that if I'm going to be using these palettes, I can't do that. Another thing that I noticed with this was that even though these colors, these more foiled shades, look beautiful when swatched, and even, I'm just going to put 3 of these from this palette down here. I mean, look at that. They are really shimmery, they are really foily, they are really pretty. The problem I was having was that unless I used a dampened flat brush and of course this isn't a flat brush, but very carefully pick up the color, spray the brush, and then apply it where I wanted it, I was getting nothing but sparkle fallout, like right under here. And I thought, you know, sometimes the best way to reflect light is to put glitter under your eye, but that's not the look I was going for. So I found that the shimmers and the foils in here were very different from the Supernova palette. And I found that I love the color story in here, and all I ever want to do is wear this palette because I love the colors so much. But I found that I couldn't use the foils without really working extra hard, and I don't always have time to work extra hard. And so today I am wearing this Divine palette, but I'm only wearing the mattes, and the little bit that I have in the inner corner and right here on the lid is something else, not from this palette. But I love the wide range of cool and warm mattes that you have in here, and I think this is great. And for $16, I don't know, I don't feel like it's such a great price. I don't see how you can't go wrong. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You just can't go wrong. It's really, really great. All right, another one that I tried, the last one that I tried is this Athena palette. So this is a lot warmer, and you'll notice that there's a couple in here, like more on this end here, that I haven't tried. I did dip into this top one, I did dip into this bottom one. These 2 here are brand new. But I tried nearly everything else. What's interesting is I find that the formula palette to palette to palette is different. I don't know if that's because they're trying to dupe a certain formula. Maybe the Natasha Denona Star palette has more of this type of formula, which might be different from her Lila palette, which might be different from Huda Beauty's formula. I don't know if that's what they're going for. But as a consumer trying to find an affordable palette with a beautiful color story, I liked this one. And again, I wish that there was a darker tone here. I found that these mattes performed really well. I didn't get too much powder. There's not a lot left in the pan. There's plenty on the brush, as much as I wanted to use, and I didn't feel like this was as messy. I feel like the Divine palette, this one that's in black and gold, this one, there was so much like all over the mirror, and maybe it's because it's black packaging, there's stuff everywhere. I felt like this overall, the formula for this was a little bit more, gotta be gentle, gotta be careful, and I didn't feel that with this. I felt like this was like any other eyeshadow palette. I didn't find that this one here didn't last on me all day. Now I'm one of those people, I get up, I take a shower, I do my hair, and then I do my makeup, and by 10 o'clock, and since I am a stay-at-home mom, my husband takes the kids to work, and I don't have to be out running errands and looking like a person until maybe 9:30, 10. And so I have time to sit and play and to do what I want, but I found that this one blended really well, but it didn't last. So I would get my face done by 9:30, 10, and by like 5 o'clock or 6 when my husband gets home from work, I already had a little bit of creasing. Now, when I used eyeshadow primer, I didn't, but I wanted to know how these all worked without primer. So I didn't put any concealer or anything down. I just put straight on the eyelid. So I think just like any eyeshadow palette, everything benefits from a primer. And these are definitely not any different. So I thought that the color story was great here. I like that we have like Truth is a little bit cooler. These guys are cooler. You definitely have your purples in here. And then you have these reds, which are something I'm not as comfortable wearing. Maybe we should say yet. But I did love, and this one down here, this really glittery shade. I mean, it is really, oh boy. I pressed way too hard on this and now I sent it everywhere. It is really, really pretty, but this is like a full-on glitter, just like the Huda Beauty palettes. This is like a serious glitter and it's fun, but if you're not careful, it ends up everywhere as like your under eye concealer. So I think that overall, out of these three, my favorite would be the Supernova. And I'm not sure whether it's formula I'm liking with this, because this tends to work really easily for me, or whether it's color story. My next favorite would be the Athena palette, the one we were just talking about. This one I think is a really nice palette, and for $16, I don't think that you can go wrong with these. I think these might take a little bit more time. You might need to give yourself an extra 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that if you're using, you know, some of those foiled shadows, because I think all of these perform best when they're applied with a damp brush. I'm just going to say that everything looks better and doesn't blend to oblivion when you use a damp brush. I feel like this is one of those palettes that if you love the color story for $16, it's not bad, but it's not one I would recommend for somebody who's just getting into makeup, who may not know, maybe if I use a different brush, what if I use a synthetic brush, or what if I change to a natural hair brush, or what if I use a flat brush, or why is this color not working for me? And I think that that's what happens sometimes, is the more experience you have, the more time you spend playing in your makeup, the more you'll figure out how to make something like this work just as well for you as maybe it might for a professional makeup artist. So that's my take. I think that for $16, they're great. I do have, and I kind of held off on reviewing any Bad Habit or even trying it, because I truly believe that my support and my money should go to people who are the originators of the idea. You know, maybe to Natasha, Denona, maybe to Huda Beauty, maybe to people who are coming out with these sorts of things. And then the other part of me said, you know what? What about people who can't afford a $125 palette or a $150 palette or the $65 Huda Beauty palette? What if maybe they want to try those color stories, but they can't afford that? Are these on their own good shadows? I would say yes, they are. I would say, but you would do a lot better with them if you are comfortable and working with all different types of eyeshadow finishes and different types of brushes and using different techniques. That's just my 2 cents. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day. And if you haven't already, would you please subscribe? And I'll see you again soon.